For this chapter, we still need to cover some more materials. For example, at the end of the chapter, we have this appendix talking about comparative advantage in international trade. This is an example over there, and it tells you how to compute the opportunity cost for producing one product in sacrifice of another product. And then you need to derive the absolute advantage and the comparative advantage, and then to see how the trade would occur between the two countries. So this is something required for my class, and you will do a quiz on that. To give you a closer look, let me just start something that is easier. So let's see, we have two countries, let's say France and Germany. Okay, and there are only two products available. One is beer and another is wine. Okay, and the table I'm drawing here is called a max production table. Okay, max production table. So basically, if France wants to emphasize all its resources in beer production, they can produce 4 beers. If they produce wine only, they would produce 10 wines. And for Germany, if they produce beers, they can produce 12 beers. If they just produce wines, they can only produce, let's say, 3 wines. So this is a either or situation. Okay, this 4 and 10, 12 and 3, they do not coexist. So it's about using 100% of resources to focus on in one product. So this is called a max production table. All right, so from the comparison, you can see that France is good at wine production compared to Germany, as 10 is greater than 3, and Germany is better than France in beer production, as 12 is greater than 4. So under the classic economic theory developed by Adam Smith in Wealth of Nation book, so there is a trade occurring. So that means Germany will focus on beer production only, and then France will focus on wine production only. So altogether, they are making more beers and more wines, and then they're going to trade with each other. Okay, Germany will export its wine to France, and France will export it. Sorry, Germany will export beer to France, and France will export wine to Germany. So this is under the framework of absolute advantage. So what is absolute advantage? So as long as the max production in one product for one country is greater than that of another country, then this country, like Germany, has an absolute advantage. Okay, absolute advantage in beer, and France would have the absolute advantage in wine. Now let me give you another example. Let's say the trade between US and China, and we have two products. One is aircraft, and another is, let's say, toys. Okay, a lot of the Barbie dolls or Transformer toys are made in China. And if we look at the max production table, if US focus on all its resources in aircraft production, the US would produce 20 aircrafts. And if US are focused on toys production only, okay, they will produce 5 toys. All right, the thing is different for China. So if China focus on aircraft only, China could produce 2 aircraft, but China can produce 4 toys. So again, this is a either or situation. So you can see which country has the absolute advantage in aircraft production. Definitely is US, because 20 is greater than 2. And which country has an absolute advantage in toys production? Definitely US still, because 5 is greater than 4. So US has the absolute advantages in both aircraft and toys production. So does that mean US will not have any chance to trade with China? No. Okay, there still could be some chance to trade. And here we come to the idea of a comparative advantage. Okay, advantage. let's say if China wants to focus on the aircraft production, so 2 airs equals to 4 toys. All right, so that means for each aircraft they don't produce, they can produce 2 toys. Okay, so it's 2 toys per aircraft. Alrighty, and for the U.S., it's 20 aircrafts would consume the same resources as 4 toys. Okay, and for U.S., so this is 0.25 toys per air. Okay, so for China, if it wants to produce aircraft, then they have to sacrifice to 2 toys. And for US, if they want to produce aircraft, they only need to sacrifice 0.25 toys. So what are these? These are the opportunity cost of producing aircraft. Oops. In sacrifice of toys. Okay, to produce the same aircraft, China needs to sacrifice more toys, and U.S. needs to sacrifice less toys. So you can see China has higher opportunity cost of producing aircraft. So China is not better. So China is better not to produce aircraft. Okay, so if we look at another situation for U.S. and for the toys production for U.S., they are looking at 20 aircraft for 5 toys. So that is 4 aircrafts to produce 1 toy. All right, and for China, it is 2 aircrafts for 4 toys. So that would give you 0.5 aircraft per toy. So you can see that for US to produce toy, they would sacrifice more aircraft for 1 unit of toy produced. And for China, if they want to produce a toy, they only need to sacrifice half aircraft. So US has a higher opportunity cost for producing toys, so that's a disadvantage. And China has the lower opportunity cost of producing toys, so that's their advantage. So let me just mark this. A lower opportunity cost is a comparative advantage. So just like China has the comparative advantage in toy production because they need to sacrifice less aircraft, and the US has the comparative advantage in aircraft production because for each aircraft they produce, they just need to sacrifice less toys. Okay, so to emphasize what I said, so a comparative advantage means lower opportunity cost to produce one product in sacrifice of another. That basically means if we all focus on each other's specialty, let's say US just emphasize on aircraft production, it will produce 20 aircraft, and China will emphasize on toys production, it will produce 4 toys. So the trade would be US export aircraft to China, and then China export toys to US. Would both countries be better off? So we will see. If the trade price is okay, the trade price would be between these 2 opportunity cost. Let's say this is the opportunity cost for producing the toys of the US and China. Let's make the trade price as a 2 air per toy. Okay, as 2 airs per toy. So that's between 0.5 and 4. So is the trade with this price beneficial to both nations, or at least for the United States? So let's see what would happen if there's no trade at all, if both countries are isolated from each other and are operating individually. So still we have this table. Again, I said this is a either or situation. So this is 100% resources would produce 20 aircraft for US, or 100% resources produced for toys for the US. If I write the table again, if there's no trade at all, and the U.S. will locate its resources in aircraft and toys. Let's say if U.S. allocate 60% of aircraft, 60% resource in aircraft, so that's gonna produce 12 aircraft. That's 20 times 60%. And the rest of 40% resources go to toys production, but U.S. will not produce this five, and the U.S. only produced 40% of the five, so that's going to be two. All right. And China do the same thing, let's assume for simplicity purpose. 60% of its resources focused on aircraft production, so that will bring up to 1.2 aircrafts. And the rest of 40% goes to toys production, and that's going to yield 1.6 aircraft. So this is what happened when there's no trade between the two countries, when the two countries are operating separately. Let's say if there is a trade, so we need to bring down the scenario into before trade scenario and after trade scenario. Let's say U.S. and China, they both focus on its comparative advantage. As I said earlier, U.S. has a comparative advantage in toys production. U.S. just do aircraft production and do no toy production at all. And for China, it's the opposite. No aircraft production, but just to focus on toys production. And once again, this is not either or, this is coexistence. Okay, so it's an and. Okay, so in the after trade situation, let's say after trade, okay, so China, let's say, will sell toys to US and the US will sell airs to China in exchange. So let's say the trade volume is two toys and this is the trade price. So that's basically equivalent two toys to four aircrafts. For US, after the trade, their aircraft will go to down to 16, all right, since it comes from 20 and 4 has been shipped to China. And for US, the toys they would receive is two toys, okay? And for China, they will receive four aircrafts and they give up two toys. They originally produced four toys, now they have two left. Okay, so that's the product allocation after trade. So we want to compare the after trade situation with no trade situation. Is the U.S. better off? Okay, if there is a trade, then U.S. would still have more aircraft, and China is better off as well. If you see China actually better off more because the toy in the country and the aircraft in the country are both higher than the situation when there's no trade at all. Okay, but don't forget, for the trade to happen, for both countries to get benefits, they have to focus on their competitive advantage. U.S. focus on the aircraft production and China focus on the toy production. I know the numbers here look a little bit funny because two toys, how can two toys be worth two aircrafts in the real world? So just to treat that as 2 million toys, and the things would make more sense. And you can also change your numbers. See, I put a 60-40% allocation of resources, the 60% to 40% altogether is 100% of resources. You can exchange that with 30 to 70 or 15 to 85. And the trade price, it doesn't have to be 2 air per toy. It can be 1 air per toy or 3 air per toy as long as the price falls into the range of 0.5 and 4. That's a reasonable trade price. And in particular, which closer to which boundary, it really depends on the negotiation power of the both countries. And back to our example in the textbook. So you have the max production of a wheat and a TV in two countries. So this is just what I mentioned earlier. If you look at the comparative advantage, country A is better than B in wheat production, is better than B in TV production. So country A has an absolute advantage in both wheat and TV productions. Still, there could be beneficial for A to trade with B. All right. So in order to understand that, you need to figure out the comparative advantage. You should know it is the opportunity cost to produce one good in sacrifice of another. How to calculate that? It's easy. You just take the reciprocal 100 TV over 200 wheat. So that's the opportunity cost to produce one wheat in sacrificed TV. So that's going to be half TV sacrificed to produce 1 ton of wheat. And you can do it for country A, do it for country B. And in terms of opportunity cost for producing TV, you do the reciprocal. So in order to produce 1 TV, country A will need to sacrifice 2 wheat, as 200 wheat equivalent to 100 TV. So that's 2 wheat per TV. You do the same thing with country B. And then you make comparison. So for TV production, country A's opportunity cost is 2 wheat. For country B is 1.6 wheat. So who has a comparative advantage? Of course, the lower number is the better one. So country B has the comparative advantage in TV production. That means country B will focus on the TV production and then trade the excess TVs with country A in exchange of wheat. On the other side, country A will focus on the wheat production and then exchange excess wheat with the country B for TV. I know it's a quite wording, and just to try your best to understand that. If not, there's textbook materials for some reading to help you understand. Okay, so the trade price would be in the middle of the two comparative advantages between 1.6 and 2 wheat per TV. The 1.8 wheat per TV would be a good price. So that's how the trade would happen. So what's the lesson here? What's the point? You see, country A is better than B in both products. So just like US is better than China in terms of producing aircraft, in terms of producing machineries, in terms of producing toys, jeans, and clothing. However, US still needs China to trade with because US has a higher opportunity cost to produce those lower end product. To produce more jeans or clothing, the US would sacrifice its laborers. These laborers would not be able to produce aircraft or pharmaceutical stuff, all this at the higher level of production lines. In our daily life, think about this. You have a dentist in the neighborhood, and this dentist is very good at doing his yard work. Still, this dentist would hire a boy from the neighborhood to do the yard work for him, although the boy doesn't do as good job as a dentist. Why so? Why could that happen? It's because the dentist, in order for him to do the yard work, he would sacrifice his work hours to make money to treat patient. Then his opportunity cost of doing the yard work is much higher than the opportunity cost of the boy in the neighborhood. That's the reason of the trade between the dentist and the boy, although the dentist is better than the boy in yard work.